Chris Fenton is the president and owner of IT Squared Resource Inc. She started the firm in 1999, and since that time, IT Squared Resource has been growing one client at a time. Their commitment to delivering exceptional results through right fit solutions and best in class client care has earned them long term roles as the trusted IT and telecom resource to several of Southwest Ohio's top organizations and businesses in the government, healthcare, financial, and energy fields. Chris has been a member of TAB since 2014. And Chris, if you're ready, I will hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for the introduction. I am honored to be here and want to thank the TAB organization and my TAB coach, Bob Hodem, for the opportunity to share this important information on a much broader scale. As you mentioned, I started my firm in 1999, and we've been serving businesses throughout the greater Dayton and northern Cincinnati areas since then, providing the solid solutions and a reliable team of technology professionals to guide them through and manage the many complexities that technology brings with it today. Cybersecurity in recent years has certainly jumped to the top of the list of those complexities that all businesses are faced with. And one of our guiding philosophies at IT Squared is to add value to all those that we serve. Today, we are serving all of you that joined us on this call, and our aim is to shed some light on why cybercrime is zeroing in on small business and give you actionable tips and resources that you can use to help protect your business, your bank accounts, and all those that you serve. This is usually about an hour and a half long presentation. Since I only have about 35 minutes, let's jump right in. So what we'll be covering today is here on the slide over the next 35 minutes. Be sure to stick around to the end where I'm going to share with you some links to self-assessments where you can determine your own risk profiles, a site where you can actually check to see if your own email has been hacked, along with some staff training resources and more. Given the amount of content that we're going to cover in a very short time frame, please hold your questions to the end, and I'll be happy to stay on and answer as many questions as possible at the end. So what is cybercrime? Well, here's the legal definition. The threat is an incredibly serious and growing threat. Cyber intrusions are becoming more commonplace, more dangerous, and more sophisticated. Our nation's critical infrastructure, including both private and public sector networks, are targeted by adversaries. American companies are targeted for trade secrets and other sensitive corporate data. Universities for their cutting-edge research and development. And as citizens, we're often targeted by fraudsters and identity thieves. And in the worst-case scenarios, we have children that are targeted online by predators. So why has this become so pervasive? Well, make no mistake, this is definitely a business. And cybercrime rings have become very sophisticated. They're very well funded. They're well organized. And unlike most of us, hackers don't have rules or regulations and compliance concerns like HIPAA and HITECH and PCI to contend with. In recent years, cybercrime has evolved from an amateur practice into a malicious trade that can be taught, learned, and improved upon. And the hackers refine their skills and swap industry secrets on the deep web forums, and that community is growing day by day. Because cybercrime happens irrespective of national boundaries, the hacker in one country can collaborate with others across the globe. And of course, we're hearing about these success stories for the hackers almost daily now in the headlines. This graphic was last updated on April 25th and represents only the reported data breaches out there. Other types of attacks that we were hearing about and are becoming quite pervasive are ransomware attacks, like the WannaCry, Petya, and Airbus that has just hit since May. That has hit hundreds of thousands of computers across the globe, and it's cost victims millions of dollars to regain access to their data. Another type is a distributed denial of service attack. This is one that here in the States we experienced a large-scale one never seen before, that back in last October against Dyn, and this attack brought down much of America's internet for nearly an entire day and involved an estimated 100,000 malicious endpoints. And this was a botnet, and unlike others, which are typically made up of infected computers, this was the Mirai botnet, and it's largely made up of so-called Internet of Things devices, such as digital cameras and DVR players. And this really just speaks to the importance of why we need to think about security and these different devices that we're using that are all connected to the internet and what their impact can be. And beyond these staggering numbers that you see with these incidents on the slide, it is estimated that 85% of fraud and cybercrime is not reported to CEOs, boards, or the authorities for fear of reputation damage or job or business loss. So how did we get here? Well, in the old days, the crime business was pretty simple. Thieves would hold you up at gunpoint or a knife and demand your money. The startup costs and overhead were pretty low, but of course, just like most businesses, so to speak, criminals started thinking, how can I grow my business or get more cash for each robbery? And of course, technology answered that question. Trains came along, and instead of robbing one person at a time, now they could rob 200 or 300 people at a time. And today, thanks to advances in technology, all of our personal, financial, business, and most any other information about us is stored digitally on devices connected to the internet. This is the new train for cyber thieves. Remember back in 2014, the JP Morgan credit card hack. It wasn't just one person stealing a credit card. It was one person or a small group of people who stole tens of millions of credit cards. Actually, it was 76 million personal credit cards and 7 million business account records, including email accounts, in one fell swoop. And this was right on the heels of the Target and the Home Depot attacks, where 40 million credit cards were stolen at Target and 56 million cards were stolen at Home Depot. And think about that. Never in the history of mankind has any one person or small group of people been able to rob so many so quickly in one fell swoop. The news headlines may highlight the data security attacks on these large organizations, government agencies, but they aren't the only ones that are getting hacked. Small business has become the prime target. And unlike the big guys, all too often we are not resilient enough to weather such an attack. And unfortunately, it's this mindset that is helping fuel the downstream for cyber criminals. And alarmingly, the proof is in the numbers. Nearly half of all small businesses have suffered a data security breach. And 43% of cyber attacks, based on research, is now actually against small businesses. With the automation tools, cyber criminals have found that they can make a large sum of money simply targeting a few hundred or thousand small businesses. And you don't just hear about these attacks because they don't make the news today. So misperceptions by small business owners exist all the time. And when it comes to what they perceive the value of their data to be, they underestimate it, which means that they're not taking really the high threat very seriously. According to the National Cybersecurity Alliance, 1 in 5 small businesses fall victim to cybercrime each year. And here, 60% of those businesses will be out of business within 6 months. The smaller the business, the closer that creeps to 100%. And the natural question is, why does the breach cause so many businesses to actually fail? And this number right here, this is the cost per record, and the cost per record, standard cost per record per breach today, and that number has come down significantly. So the direct financial cost is certainly a major reason that small businesses fail. Again, while the cost per record has come down somewhat over the last couple of years, the number of records that we're keeping digitally that have either personal identifiable information or sensitive personal information is increasing exponentially for us. But that number doesn't encompass all of the costs of an incident. And here we're going to go through a few of the other costs of those incidents. Public relations or reputation, that's number one. A breach causes harm to an organization's brand and reputation through unwanted media attention. With trust levels down, businesses usually experience an increase in customer acquisition costs and diminished goodwill. And normally a PR call center will be necessary to establish, to be able to keep media, victims and stakeholders and employees informed in the aftermath. Loss of customers. In a survey of 2,000 adults across the U.S. back in 2016 by an independent technology market research specialist, Vance and Bourne, 76% of the survey folks said that they would move away from a company with a high record of data breaches. Next, you have legal costs. Some companies have had to pay upwards of $10 million to settle, and those costs don't include necessarily the fees paid to their legal teams. Then we have regulatory fines. Data breaches can attract fines from the Federal Communications Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, Health and Human Services, the payment card industry, and other regulatory agencies. And then, of course, just the cost of business disruption, and this actually accounts for 39% of the total external costs, which include costs associated with business process failures and loss of productivity, employee productivity. And obviously, if a business gets disrupted during its busy season, the cost could affect more than half of the business's annual income. So we know the potential, now we know a little bit of the potential that various cyber threats pose to our business and reputations. To start developing our protection strategies, let's look at what the 6 major things are that the bad actors want. Number 1, we've got banking credentials. Money rules, and most of us keep the majority of our money in the bank and in investment accounts. Recent story here, this happened actually back in December 2015, and where most of the banking credential incidents happen is through phishing emails. That's how the criminals get in. And in this case, that happened with a school district in Pennsylvania. The criminals, they waited until the school administrators were away on holiday. They had gained access through a phishing email through other school associates and worked their way in until they had administrative access and were able to hack into the email. And over the holiday break in 2015, they were able to siphon little over $704,000 out of the 2 school districts' bank accounts. The Western Beavers Financial Institution, ESB, their bank basically managed to reverse some of the transfers, but the Pennsylvania School District was still out more than $441,000. Number 2, sensitive data about your customers, vendors, and staff. Names, street addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, credit card numbers, social security numbers, driver's license. As a business, it's not unusual for us to have this kind of data about those that we interact with, and it's the kind of information that allows unscrupulous individuals the ability to take over someone's identity. What they want is a collection of this type of data to sell in the cyber underground, where this information can fetch anywhere from $1,000 to $300 per record. Next is trade secrets. As entrepreneurs and innovators, we all work hard, many creating products and services that become a part of more of a global landscape. And along with these exciting challenges comes valuable information and data, such as trade secret formulas, design specs, and well-defined processes. And there's certainly a market out there for this information. At a briefing here just last month in July at the FBI's Washington headquarters, the head of the agency's counterintelligence division, Randall Coleman, said that the Bureau has seen a 53% increase in economic espionage cases or the theft of data and trade secrets, leading to the loss of hundreds of billions of dollars over the past year. Email addresses. People don't often think of the value of an email address, and whenever you sign up with any service online, it will almost certainly require that you supply an email address. In nearly all cases, the person who is in control of that address can reset the password of any associated service or accounts merely by requesting a password reset. So how much are these associated accounts worth? There isn't exactly a central exchange for hacked accounts in the cyber underground, but recent price lists posted by several miscreants who traffic in non-financial compromised accounts offer some insights, and that's what you see here on the slide. Here's another illustration of the power of an email address. If your inbox was held for ransom, would you pay to get it back? And if you look at this, there's a number of different areas that simply by your email address, people are able to, if they're able to gain access to that, they can gain access to a greater portion of your life. The rest of us, as we're thinking about this, again, if your inbox was held for ransom, would you pay to get it back? If your webmail got hacked and it was used as a backup account to receive password reset emails for another webmail account, what do you think would happen? Ultimately, the person would have full control of both of your accounts. And here's a startling fact. If you've corresponded with your financial institution via email, chances are decent that your account will eventually be used in an impersonation attempt to siphon funds from your account. Number 5, virtual hiding places. Cyber attackers will expose the weakest link to their end target and literally work their way up. So when they find someone, a company that's working with larger organizations, it's not uncommon for them to really go through social engineering to try and gain access to the smaller company, with ultimately the gain being to reach the larger firm. They do this through infected emails, through phishing scams. Sometimes it's insider information, actions that cause the breach. And patience is certainly a virtue for many cyber criminals looking for an opening to a larger honeypot. And shockingly, it still takes, on average, almost 200 days for a breach to be detected. And number 6, your reputation. The higher up the ladder of success that you go, the more people that you'll find that may desire to knock you down a peg or two. Unscrupulous competitors out there or disgruntled employees. Today, targeted reputation damage is a serious concern for small businesses. In fact, damaging attacks, whether it be data theft or destruction by rogue employees, has moved up to the 3rd leading cause of lost claims, according to Net Diligence 2013 Cyber Liability and Data Breach Insurance Claims Report. And while there's no bulletproof way to protect against the threats that we've talked about, there are strategies you can employ to minimize the impacts should your systems become compromised. So let's take a quick look at a few of those. So for malware, this is common. Most of us have antivirus out there. Malware or malicious software is an integral and dangerous aspect of the internet threats and can be designed to attack your systems, your devices, or your data. It can be fast-moving, fast-changing, and enter through any number of points like end-user devices, email attachments, web pages, cloud services, user actions, and removable media. Modern malware can be designed to actually avoid defenses or attack and disable them. So what can you do? Using anti-malware, of course, is a fundamental practice that all IT providers are going to recommend. Using one that offers a centralized infrastructure that compiles information on the file reputations and behavior analytics, or having administrators manually push out updates to all machines will help in protecting you. After applying an update, any of the automated systems that are out there should be verifying that each system has received its signature update, and it should also be alerting you if that protection has been turned off for any reason by any of your users. Keeping all your systems and software up to date, that means your computers, your desktops, your laptops, and phones. That's what most of us think about, but it also includes your servers, your firewalls, your switches, and any other peripheral that's connected to your internet and has an IP address. There are firmware updates and other updates that need to happen to these devices, and if they're left to go without the proper updates, those devices are what offer the opportunity for hackers to get in. Tips for protecting your bank account. Here's a list of things that can help you in protecting your bank account, access to your bank account. It becomes a little less convenient for us, but that convenience has certainly proven to be the road for people who have lost great sums of money out of their bank accounts, whatever that amount is. A story that was shared here at the end of last year with a coach from the Gazelles organization was where this individual actually ended up losing over $400,000 out of their bank account. Their bank recovered part of it, but they didn't recover all of it, and they wouldn't cover all of it because the FDIC does not cover business bank accounts the same way that it covers personal bank accounts. And the lessons learned here by this individual was that he had gotten a little bit laxed with his security practices. He was in a conference where he was actually speaking to CEOs from around the world, decided to use public Wi-Fi at the hotel that he was at, and within minutes that site had been targeted because of the level of the individuals that were there for that conference. His device was compromised, which allowed them, the attackers, to then hack the email and then impersonate this individual with his executive assistant and with the banking folks, and basically siphon out more than $400,000 out of his account. And social media. This is allowing social media access from your business network can have dire consequences if your systems are not properly maintained and protected. If you think about on the slide, you've got 600,000 Facebook accounts that are hacked every single day, and criminals are using social engineering to get to Facebook users' business accounts because a lot of folks have a weak password policy, and it's human nature. We want to keep things easy in our lives, and so people will use the same password that they use for business purposes for their personal business and these types of social media accounts. The cyber criminals know this, and that's why there is so much activity on sites like Facebook where people's accounts are getting hacked. And how do you combat that? Having good staff training so that they understand, what the implications are to the business. Having acceptable use policies, strong password policies, good solid business grade anti-malware software, strong firewall protections, keeping your systems and software up to date, and then having the reporting and the monitoring to know that these things are happening on a regular basis. Those will all go a long way in helping to protect you from these types of incidences. Another factor in social media, and this isn't so much on the cybercrime aspect, but it was an interesting study, and so I thought I would share that with everybody, is the significant loss of productivity due to social media activity. This was a survey that was done with, I believe it was around 600 employees or workers at various businesses, and asking them how much time they felt they wasted during working hours on social media, and this was their answers and the places that they spent their time, their work time, during cruising on social media. So if your business isn't where you want it to be, it may be time for some staff training and acceptable use policy, and certainly some technology to monitor and ensure compliance. And from a reputation standpoint, here's where social media plays in once again. This is bad PR. This is actually old, but I think it stuck with a lot of people when they saw this. As business owners, we tend to think our staff has or should have the same reasoning that we do. Obviously, this act was not in the best interest of anyone. Again, clear rules, staff training on acceptable behavior, and use policies combined with technology to help you monitor and manage social media activity can go a long way in making people think before they do crazy things. And ransomware, this is a big one that is coming from social media sites and phishing emails as well. Educating your staff on what to do when they receive suspicious email or attachments, and use responsible password policies. That's all a great first step. And of course, having good backups that are regularly tested and monitored so that you know through the monitoring that if any of those backups happen to fail, you can address that right away, rather than knowing that they failed only when you're having to go and you actually need the data from those backups. And a great resource with free ransomware simulators that you can use in your business to get an idea, and I'm going to share this at the end on one of the slides as well, but you can use this to do some tests in your business and get an idea of just how vulnerable you are with your staff, or maybe your staff will prove that, hey, they're on the ball and this wouldn't happen to you. But it's knowbe4.com, and it's know as in KNOW, the letter B and the number 4.com. And shadow IT. This is a data leak problem for a lot of businesses. And knowing that it's happening is the first step. So knowing where is your data? Is it out on, are your employees using Dropbox or Box.net or one of the the cloud data storage sites because it's more convenient for them? A good business grade firewall with web filtering should provide you the kind of reporting so that you know where your data is going. And I'm not much of a betting person, but I would take the odds that most, if not everyone, on this call has a smartphone. Many of you use them to access your company email. How about your employees? How many of you have a password on your phone? Or a remote kill switch to wipe it if it's lost or stolen? Again, if you or your staff are accessing any of your company data, and really your personal data via your smartphone, these devices need antivirus as well. And to take it to another level of security, a mobile device policy in your business with monitoring and management will go a long way to secure your organization against today's most pervasive threats. Spam filtering, spam, we've all dealt with this for many years. Spam filtering and training are your best defenses here. And the bottom line is we all need to get serious about protecting our company against cybercrime and take the steps to at least mitigate to the extent that we can the possibility of us being attacked or the impact if we do experience an incident. And no one out there, again, can tell you that they can protect you 100%, but there are fundamental steps that can reduce your chances down to a small fraction of experiencing an incident as opposed to just leaving the doors wide open. And so 3 steps that you can take as business owners to really understand where you're at is first, a threat assessment. Knowing where you're at is the first step to being able to plug those holes. Next, develop an action plan and work with whoever your IT resource is and your other key stakeholders in the business to understand, what are the highest risk, where's our biggest vulnerability, what's the critical data, and how do we best protect that first. And then lastly, ongoing maintenance and monitoring. This is not a set it and forget it type of a scenario. The staff training, the system updates, the monitoring, the management, these are all ongoing. And here finally we have some tips and resources for you that you can go to. Again, use the folks that you know, the internal resources. If you would like to reach out to me, I'm happy to have a conversation, and my contact information will be here at the end on the last slide. I highly encourage everyone to run through this workplace security risk calculator. This is sponsored by the National Cybersecurity Alliance. It's free. It takes about 10 minutes, and most of the questions on here are non-technical, and it will help you get a good feel for where you stand today. And if you do have if you do not have an acceptable use policy, here as well, use this free FCC.gov cyber planner tool to help create one. And remember to keep your systems updated, use strong passwords, and definitely have good backups. And a few other useful sites for you here are one, where I have been pawned. or have I been pawned, excuse me. This site, you can go there, you can put in your email address, and it's going to tell you if your email address was included in any major hacks that are out there. If you see your email address in this list and you haven't changed your password for a long time, first change your password, most definitely. The other site, the KnowBe4, this is knowbe4.com. Your users are your last line of defense, and they need to be trained and remain on their toes with the security top of mind. This has great free resources for staff training, for testing purposes. So highly encourage you to check this site out. The mitnicksecurity.com, this is another great resource, and then certainly the CIsecurity.org. This is the Center for Internet Security, and they have the 20 controls that they've developed, and this is a guiding framework to best practices and security controls that are used throughout the industry. And Julie, with that, we moved things up just a little bit, so we wrapped up a little early. If we have some questions.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. We do have a couple questions, but again, just a reminder, if you do have any, please type them into your questions box and we will certainly get to it. So Neil has asked, a little bit earlier on, you mentioned the cost per record, and he was just wondering what the definition of that cost per record is.
Yeah, the general definition of the cost per record is what it is, the notification cost per record. So if you have a breach, first, if you have an incident, you need to have it investigated to find out if it's truly a breach. If it's been determined that it's a breach, then you have obligation, and it depends on what state you're in. You need to check your state laws around this, as well as there are dependencies on the industry that you're in from a regulatory standpoint. But the cost per record are things like the actual cost of notification that you'll have in some of those other aspects that we talked about, and there's some of that cost is included. Generally, the law, things like lawsuits and all of those things are, because those are tough to average out, those types of things are not included.
Okay, and Rick has asked, are cloud-based services more secure than data stored on site?
The cloud industry will definitely tell you that, but there have been incidences where at different cloud providers where their security has been laxed. So, in general, the folks that are building data centers, to be able to provide cloud storage and cloud servers for businesses, they take security very seriously, because an incident obviously is going to be broadcast and be very damaging to their reputation. On the flip side of that, someone may decide that within their organization that they have the wherewithal and the processes and the resources to be able to build out security within their own site, so they're controlling access. So it's not a definite yes or a definite no. It's going to depend on what your resources are and what you're willing to invest really into your own site for security, as opposed to what a particular cloud provider is going to provide you with. And that's where good due diligence is really necessary, to talk with the cloud providers and understand, have them provide you with their certifications, do some homework on the cloud providers, and make sure you know who you're dealing with.
Perfect, thank you. Kevin has asked, in regard to debit cards, does the chip make it any safer to use in regard to your comments about not using debit cards?
So yes, the chip is supposed to help with that, but there are still on a daily basis, there are still incidences where people are getting a hold of a debit card. They're physically getting a hold of the debit card, or they're still cloning, and a lot of a lot of banks have still not completely moved to that system. So the chip has helped most definitely, but that doesn't make it a fail safe. And the issue with the debit card is, in a lot of cases, the transactions aren't covered in the same manner. And we're really talking more from a business perspective than we are from a personal perspective, because the laws and the protections that the bank provides to consumers as opposed to businesses is drastically different and a lot less. So as a business, your protections with funds in your bank account are not protected, or the bank is not going to respond in anywhere near as favorable of a manner to an incident as they are to a consumer. They just haven't, for whatever reason. I'm not certain what the reason is behind that, but the protections just aren't there where they're going to replace funds as they do on the consumer side.
Okay, thank you. And he did have a follow-up. Does freezing your credit protect you better?
Yes, and Clark Howard would definitely tell you so. So if there's any Clark Howard listeners out there, yes, freezing your credit, well, again, it's an inconvenience, because when you want to unfreeze it, you have to go through a little bit of a process, but it's not a major process. Freezing your credit is an excellent way to definitely help protect yourself from identity theft.
And I had a question too. Are you able to share maybe some thoughts on insurance that you can get that helps cover cyber attacks?
Yes, and this actually, thank you for bringing that up, Julie. This insurance is something that a lot of businesses have a misconception about, and I hear this very often. Well, if I have an incident, it'll be covered under my insurance. And I can share with you that, as an IT services provider, I carry cyber liability insurance, and it's encouraged that any business today, because of how pervasive a problem this has become, that they cover it. The process that I have to go through to be able to carry cyber liability insurance, because of the fact that as an IT provider, we generally will have privileged access into our clients' networks, and the questionnaires that I have to answer today, as opposed to the processes and that I have to certify to, what I had to do, say, 5 years ago, has changed dramatically. And before it was basically, hey, do you follow good practices? Yes. Okay, check mark. Okay, we'll insure you. Now it's a 3-page questionnaire that really gets into the details of how we handle firewall changes, how we document all of this, what are our internal policies, not just the technical aspect of things, but what are the business policies that are taught and trained with our staff. And so these same types of questions are being asked of other types of organizations in order to provide the cyber liability insurance. And for the simple reason that, as with the Center for Internet Security, their list of 20 different items, their 20 different controls, those have been proven that the more of those controls that you have in place, the likelihood of an incident is going to drop significantly. And the insurance companies know this. I mean, they're in the risk business, so they want to minimize their risk of having to pay out a claim. And they're saying, hey, we need to make certain that everyone is doing their fundamental part of the baseline protections. You can't just have open firewalls and no password policies, and you never update your systems and your software is all out of date. They'll never pay a claim in that scenario. And as a matter of fact, just a week and a half ago, I was on a panel for our local Better Business Bureau, and a cybersecurity firm was on the panel with me, a gentleman that owns that firm, and they're actually being hired by the insurance companies to investigate and make certain that these claims that are being submitted are that these companies have done their due diligence and they at least have these fundamental protections in place. So from a forensic standpoint, the insurance company has hired this gentleman and his firm to go in. They have a large claim right now for a company that experienced a breach and an incident, and before they're going to pay that out, they want to make certain that this company, did their part. So if you're looking for that insurance, again, look at the fundamentals, and those things are, as we talked about here, good policies, good training with your staff, the password policies, making sure that you have the fundamentals of antivirus, keeping systems updated, knowing what's on your network, right, and controlling what's on your network. Those are fundamentals, and those are things that you'll see in the CIS 20 controls up at the top of the list.
All right, thank you. We have just a couple minutes left, so if you do have a final question for Chris, please go ahead and type it into the question box. I did see one more. What's the one thing you see companies fail to do most often?
I think the one thing that we see as we're going out and we're talking with prospective new clients is testing their backups. I mean, there's a number of things from an update standpoint, but all of that aside, when your data's gone, your data's gone, and if you can't get it back, unfortunately, statistics say you're pretty much done. You're going to be out of business in a very short period of time, and by not testing backups, I've seen it too many times over my career where people are going through a process and they think that they're backing things up, or they say, hey, I have this backup system, it's running, I'm good, and something happens where they need to go back in and pull some of that data back in to recover something, and they find out that there's nothing there. And so, testing those systems on a regular basis is really paramount, and we rarely see that with folks that we're going in for the first time, and when we do an assessment for them, or if I just simply ask, how often are you testing your backups? It's usually a little bit of a deer in the headlight look of, well, no, not very often, or not at all.
All right, thank you. We had one last question pop up while you were answering that. Willie is wondering if 5% of a company gross income is spent on IT and security, is that an effective amount to budget in businesses under 50 employees?
There's actually some interesting studies about that. I haven't seen it so much by company size as I have by industry, and to where by different industries, depending on the industry that you're in, the spend on technology across those industries ranges anywhere from the last report that I saw, and this was actually from 2015, and spending has been increasing because of just how much more we're using technology, but that range was anywhere from 2% of their gross revenues on up to 9% of their gross revenues. So and folks that are like companies like myself, being in the technology field, and folks that are in the technology field, they tend to be at the higher end of that spectrum. Healthcare tends to be at the higher end of that spectrum. Construction tends to be at the lower end of that spectrum. Financial institutions, again, are at the higher end of that spectrum. And so when you're looking at and thinking about, what should I be budgeting for costs, that's actually a pretty quick number to be able to get to for you to, you can Google that, and or I'm happy to share. This was a Gartner report that was done. I'm happy to share that with folks if they want to shoot me an email so that they can see, where they fall within their industry. based on this data. And that's an all-encompassing number. So when you think about hardware, you think about your software, you think about your support, you think about all of the different aspects of technology and what those different costs are today. Staffing management, that's one that's very often overlooked, the management of the technical support individuals. With the cost associated with that. So all of that lumped together, and if you pair that to, where you fall within your peer group for spending, again, this is something I can tell you by experience that we see, folks they don't know, and they're shocked sometimes when they see that number, but this is what companies across their spectrum in their field are spending. So again, that range can vary. So it's sorry, Willie, I can't give you the hard yes that's it, but I can share with you that yes, the range is there and that it's different by industry, and it is a number that that folks hopefully will start to look at to see where they're at in the competitive landscape. Because the bottom line of it is that technology and how we use technology as the tool, and it is a big driver, and I know TAB supports this as well. Technology in your business is a big driver to how efficient you are in operating your business, which obviously leads to more profitable, more productive, more successful businesses.
All right, thank you. And one last question did come in. Hannah is wondering, she said, I'm struggling to find what we as a CPA firm are actually required to do. I feel we are at a reasonable point now after a few years of work for the size of our phone business, but things like email backup, are we required to back up email? She says they are on an Exchange server, so it's available online if we have a crash issue, but where can we find the legal requirements that is industry specific?
Yeah, I believe FINRA is what covers Hannah's industry, and there are some guidelines, and the regulatory agencies are getting better at defining those guidelines a little more clearly than what they have been in the past. So there are some websites, and I can certainly, Hannah, if you want to shoot me an email, I can pull up some of those sites and be able to shoot that out. Or Julie, what I can do is just, I do have a resource list that I can pull up based on the different regulatory bodies that where folks can go to those websites and find that information.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you. And as Chris mentioned, her contact information is up there right now. So if you do have any last questions for her, feel free to reach out or learn more about their company at their website. Thank you so much, Chris, for presenting today. It was a very timely topic, and we're very excited to have you. If you guys are interested, you're welcome. If you guys are interested in checking out any past Boss webinars, they are available on demand by visiting our website and clicking on webinars. The next one will be on September 20th, and it's going to be about marketing tips to streamline and grow your pipeline. And you guys will be able to register for that on our website by the end of the week. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.